What's up, everybody? Today we've got an in-law story that escalates from annoying to legendary in about 3 acts. A guy buys a new house with his wife. His mother-in-law immediately starts demanding a key. He says no. His wife says no. Mother-in-law throws a fit. Husband's wife, my man's wife, changes the locks. But here's where it gets genius. When the mother-in-law keeps pushing, the husband decides to give her a key. A fake key. Then he waits for Christmas morning. MIL shows up early to surprise them, tries the key, and gets caught red-handed in front of the entire family, with a key that doesn't work. On Christmas morning. I'm telling you, this is top-tier strategy. Let's get into it. My mother-in-law demanded a key to our new house. I said no. She kept pushing, so I gave her a fake one. She got caught trying to sneak in on Christmas morning. I know the title sounds petty. It is petty. I fully own that. But sometimes petty is the only language certain people understand, and my mother-in-law is fluent in it. My name's Nate. I'm 31. I work as an operations coordinator at a shipping and distribution center. Basically, I make sure the right things go to the right places at the right times. It's not glamorous, but I'm good at it, and it pays the bills. My wife, Jess, is 30. She's a veterinary assistant. We've been married for 3 years and together for 6. We have a dog named Oakley, a golden doodle who is simultaneously the dumbest and sweetest animal on the planet. He once walked into a glass door 3 times in one day. Same door, same day. We took him to the vet thinking maybe his vision was bad. Vet said his eyes were fine. He's just not very bright. We love him anyway, possibly more because of it. We bought our house about a year ago. 3 bedrooms, decent yard, quiet street in a neighborhood where people wave when they drive past but don't show up unannounced. That last part was important to us, specifically to me, because my mother-in-law, who I'll call Gail, has a history of showing up unannounced like it's a competitive sport. Let me tell you about Gail. She's 62, retired teacher, lives alone about 20 minutes from us, and she has, how do I put this, no concept of boundaries. Zero. None. Gail believes that being Jess's mother gives her unrestricted all hours access to Jess's life, Jess's home, and Jess's husband. She would show up at our old apartment whenever she felt like it. We'd come home from work and Gail would be sitting on the couch watching her shows because she'd gotten a key from the building manager by telling them she was Jess's emergency contact. Which she was, technically. But using your emergency contact status to let yourself into someone's apartment while they're at work so you can watch Dateline on their couch is not what emergency contact means. At the old apartment, Gail had what I came to think of as Tuesday inspections. She'd show up on random Tuesdays, always Tuesdays, never any other day, which is somehow both predictable and unhinged, and go through the apartment like a quality control auditor at a factory. She'd check the fridge, expired yogurt would be thrown out, produce would be rearranged by freshness, and anything she deemed too processed would be moved to the back with a post-it note that said, "Consider alternatives." She'd check the bathroom. She once bought us a new shower curtain because she didn't like the pattern of the one we had. We'd had it for 3 weeks. She'd check the laundry situation and make pointed comments about wrinkled shirts. Once, and this is the one that almost broke me, she showed up and had rearranged our bookshelf, alphabetically, by author. My books were in the order I wanted them, which was vaguely by genre, but mostly by which ones I'm currently reading. She fixed that, without asking. She'd also rearrange our kitchen. I'm not exaggerating. She literally reorganized our cabinets because she thought our system was chaotic. I came home one Tuesday to find the plates where the glasses used to be, the glasses where the bowls used to be, and the bowls in a cabinet above the fridge that I can barely reach. When I asked Jess about it, she sighed and said, "That's just mom." That's just mom was the explanation for everything. Gail opens our mail. That's just mom. Gail goes through our fridge and throws out food she thinks is expired. That's just mom. Gail shows up during date night to drop something off and stays for 2 hours. That's just mom. Gail comments on our laundry pile, comments on what we're eating, comments on the brand of toilet paper we buy. That's just mom times infinity. I love Jess. I do. She's my person. But her ability to normalize her mother's behavior was the one thing that drove me absolutely insane. And when we bought the house, I saw an opportunity to reset the boundaries from scratch. The house hunting process itself was interesting because one of my unspoken criteria that I never told the realtor was How defensible is this house against Gail? I wanted a street where you could see cars approaching from a distance. I wanted a front door with a good deadbolt. I wanted a back door that locked from the inside with a chain, not just a knob lock. The realtor probably thought I was worried about crime. I was worried about brunch ambushes. The first thing I said when we got the keys, before we even moved a box in, was Gail does not get a key to this house. Jess agreed. To her credit, she was on board immediately. She said, "This is our fresh start. Mom needs to learn to call first." I almost cried with gratitude. 3 years of, "That's just Mom," and suddenly we were on the same page. I should have bought a house sooner. We moved in, unpacked boxes, organized the kitchen our way, plates on the left, glasses on the right, bowls at eye level like civilized people. Jess and I stood in the kitchen on our first night in the house, eating takeout straight from the containers, and she said, "This is ours." And it felt like it. For the first time in 6 years together, our living space was actually ours. No rearranged bookshelves, no passive-aggressive yogurt disposal, no surprise Tuesdays, just us and Oakley and a kitchen where we knew where the bowls were because nobody had moved them. We didn't give Gail a key. And the campaign began. Hold on. This is me jumping in, not Nate. I need to establish something for the listeners. Gail got a building manager to give her a key to their old apartment by claiming she was an emergency contact. She rearranged their kitchen while they were at work. She went through their fridge and threw out food. This woman treats her daughter's home like a hotel she has a lifetime membership to. I'm calling her the inspector because she doesn't visit, she conducts audits. She shows up unannounced, reviews your living conditions, reorganizes your belongings, and leaves when she's satisfied that you're living up to her standards. Nate just bought a house specifically to escape this woman's jurisdiction. And the inspector is about to discover that her security clearance has been revoked. This is going to be so good. I should mention that we did give a spare key to one person, our neighbor across the street, a retired firefighter named Hank, for actual emergencies. Hank is the kind of guy who checks on your house when you're on vacation and waves at you from his driveway while watering his immaculate lawn. He has never once entered our home uninvited. He has never rearranged our cabinets. He has never commented on our toilet paper brand. Hank is what a key holder should be, invisible until needed. Gail is what a key holder should never be, always present, never invited, and armed with opinions about your towels. Gail started asking for a key within the first week. She was helping us unpack, which I'll give her credit. She did actually help with some of the unpacking. She's not useless. She's just overbearing. During one of these unpacking sessions, she said casually, "So, when do I get my key?" Jess said, "Mom, we're not giving out keys right now." Gail laughed like Jess had made a joke. She said, "No, seriously, I'll need one for when you guys are at work. What if something happens?" Jess said, "Then we'll handle it." Gail's face changed. That subtle shift from, "Isn't this fun?" to, "I am being denied something I consider my right." She didn't push further that day, but I knew it wasn't over. The inspector doesn't accept denied access. She files an appeal. Over the next few months, Gail tried everything. She asked Jess separately when I wasn't around, thinking the resistance was coming from me. She was half right. Jess held firm. She texted Jess things like, "What if there's a fire and I need to get Oakley out?" And, "What if your pipes burst while you're on vacation?" And, "What if I need to water your plants?" We don't have plants. Jess doesn't keep plants because she once killed a cactus. A cactus. Those things survive in deserts. Jess killed one in a kitchen with central heating and regular sunlight. So no, Gail, you don't need to water our plants. She also tried what I call the slow lobby. Every time she visited, invited at least, she'd make a comment about the key. "Sure is cold outside. Good thing I don't need to stand on your porch waiting because I have a key. Oh, wait." Or she'd say, "I noticed your mail was sitting in the box for 2 days. If I had a key, I could have brought it in." She was relentless. It was like being marketed to by a door-to-door salesman who also happened to be your mother-in-law and would never leave. Gail tried the guilt route. "I'm your mother. Don't you trust me?" She tried the safety route. "What if I fall on your porch and can't get in?" She tried the emotional manipulation route. "I just want to feel welcome in my daughter's home." Jess started getting worn down. I could see it. Every text from Gail was another drop of water on the same stone. And Jess is strong, but she loves her mom and doesn't want to hurt her. That's the trap of dealing with a boundary crosser who's also someone you love. You feel guilty for protecting yourself. I want to give you one more example that I think explains why I did what I did. About 3 months after we moved in, Jess and I had a Saturday to ourselves. No plans, no obligations. We decided to have a lazy morning. Sleep in, make pancakes, watch something, just be together. At about 9:30 a.m., there was a knock on the door. Gail. She was holding a bag from a home goods store and said, "I bought you new hand towels. The ones you have look worn." She walked in, past me, past Jess in her pajamas, and went directly to the bathroom to replace the hand towels. Without asking. We hadn't invited her. We hadn't told her we needed towels. She just decided our towels were insufficient and showed up to correct the situation. Jess pulled me aside in the kitchen and said, I know. She needs to stop." I said, "Jess, she came to our house on a Saturday morning to change our towels. This is beyond she needs to stop. This is a pattern that's not going to break without something drastic." Jess looked at the bathroom, where we could hear Gail debating out loud whether the towel rod was the right height, and said, "What are you thinking?" I said, "I'm thinking about Christmas." That's when I made the decision, a decision that I have zero regrets about, even though it resulted in the most chaotic Christmas morning of my life. I told Jess we should give Gail a key. Jess looked at me like I'd suggested we adopt a tiger. She said, "What? No, we agreed." I said, "Hear me out. We give her a key, but not a real key." Jess stared at me for about 10 seconds. Then a smile crept across her face. She said, "You're going to give her a fake key?" I said, "I'm going to give her a key that looks exactly like our house key, but opens absolutely nothing." Jess thought about it for maybe 3 seconds and said, "Do it." I went to the hardware store the next day, bought a blank key that matched the style and brand of our lock. Had it cut randomly, not to any lock, just a random cut. It looked legitimate. It felt legitimate. It would go into the lock and turn part way, but it wouldn't open anything. It was the key equivalent of a store brand phone charger that fits the port but doesn't actually charge. I put it on a little key ring, nothing fancy, just a plain silver ring, and the next time Gail came over for dinner, I pulled it out and said, "Gail, Jess and I talked about it. You're right. You should have a key. For emergencies." Gail's face lit up like I'd handed her a golden ticket. She actually hugged me. First time she'd ever hugged me voluntarily. She said, "Thank you, Nate. This means so much." She put the key on her keychain immediately, right next to her car key, and a little charm of an angel that she'd gotten at some gift shop. I felt a tiny pang of guilt. Very tiny. Microscopic. It passed quickly. Pause. I need to appreciate the craftsmanship here. This man went to a hardware store, had a fake key cut to look exactly like the real one, gave it to his mother-in-law with a straight face, and accepted a hug for it. That's not petty. That's espionage. Nate is operating at CIA levels of domestic counterintelligence. He just gave the inspector a badge that opens no doors, and she pinned it to her keychain with pride. This is like giving someone a TV remote with no batteries, and watching them press buttons for hours wondering why nothing's happening. And the best part? The trap isn't even set yet. This is just the bait. Christmas is coming. And I have a feeling the inspector is about to conduct her most ambitious audit yet. The next few weeks were interesting. Gail told Jess she was so grateful that Nate had come around. She told her bridge club about the key. She told her neighbor. She told the cashier at the grocery store. I know this because the cashier, a woman named Deb, who apparently knows everyone in town, mentioned it to Jess when she was shopping one day. "Your mom is so happy about the house key." Jess came home and looked at me and said, "She told the grocery store lady." I said, "Good. More witnesses." For the next 2 months, Gail was suspiciously pleasant. She called before coming over. She didn't rearrange anything. She didn't comment on the fridge. It was like having a key, even a fake one, gave her enough of a sense of control that she relaxed. Jess noticed too. She said one night, "Mom's been really good lately. Maybe the key thing actually helped." I nodded and said nothing. Because the key thing hadn't helped. The key thing was a time bomb, and the timer was set for December 25th. I should explain something about Gail and Christmas. For Gail, Christmas is an Olympic event. She plans for it starting in September. She bakes, she decorates, she orchestrates. And every year, her signature move is to surprise us on Christmas morning by showing up before we wake up to put presents under the tree and start cooking breakfast. At the old apartment, she'd use her unauthorized key to let herself in at 6 a.m. We'd wake up to the smell of pancakes and the sound of Gail rearranging our living room furniture to make room for her decorations. We'd told her multiple times we didn't want the Christmas morning surprise. We wanted to wake up at our own pace, have our own morning, and then do the family stuff later. She ignored us every time. That's just Mom. This year, Jess and I discussed it in advance. We knew Gail would try. We knew she'd come early. And we knew she'd use her key. Her fake key. That wouldn't work. We didn't tell anyone else what was coming. Jess invited her family for Christmas brunch at 11 a.m. Gail, Jess's brother Craig, Craig's wife Holly, and Jess's grandmother Rose. Everyone confirmed. The brunch was the official event. Anything before that was unauthorized. Jess and I spent Christmas Eve wrapping presents and eating leftovers from the fridge. Oakley lay on the couch between us chewing a rope toy he'd had since he was a puppy. The house was warm. The tree was lit. It felt like the beginning of something new. Our first real Christmas in our own house, with our own traditions, on our own terms. And yeah, there was a small tactical operation planned for 6 a.m. But that didn't diminish the evening. If anything, it added a certain spice. Before bed, I texted my buddy from work, a guy named Phil who I'd told the whole plan to. It's go time. He replied with a popcorn emoji. He gets it. Christmas Eve, I made sure the deadbolt was locked. I checked it twice. Then I set up something I'd been planning for weeks. I positioned a chair near the front window of our living room, at an angle where you could see the front door but wouldn't be visible from outside. I put a blanket on it. I put a coffee mug on the side table. I set my alarm for 5:45 a.m. Jess saw the chair set up and said, "You're actually going to watch." I said, "I've been waiting 2 months for this." She shook her head and went to bed. She was smiling though. She was definitely smiling. Christmas morning, 5:45 a.m. My alarm went off. I crept downstairs in my socks, made coffee. Quietly. Our coffee maker is loud and I didn't want to alert Oakley, who sleeps in the kitchen and barks at everything including his own reflection. And sat in my chair by the window. Oakley stayed asleep. Bless him. 6:14 a.m. Headlights in the driveway. Gail's white sedan. Right on schedule. She got out of the car carrying 2 bags, presumably presents and breakfast supplies. She walked up the front porch steps. I watched through the window as she set the bags down, reached into her purse, pulled out the key, and put it in the lock. She turned it. Nothing. She pulled it out, looked at it, put it back in, turned it again. Nothing. She jiggled it. She pulled it partway out and tried again. She tried pushing the door while turning. She tried both hands. She stepped back and looked at the lock like it had personally betrayed her. I was in the chair, coffee in hand, watching this in real time like it was the greatest show on television. I couldn't look away. My chest was doing that thing where you're trying not to laugh so hard that your ribs hurt. She tried the key 4 more times. 4. Each attempt more vigorous than the last. On attempt 3, she actually leaned her body weight into the door while turning the key, like maybe the problem was insufficient force. On attempt 4, she pulled the key out completely, held it up to the porch light, examined it, blew on it. I swear to God she blew on it, like it was a Nintendo cartridge from 1992, and put it back in. It still didn't work, because it was never going to work, because it was cut to open nothing. This was the physical comedy event of the season, and I was the only audience member. She even tried the back door, which was also locked with a different lock that her fake key definitely didn't fit. She came back to the front door, tried again, and then stood on the porch with her hands on her hips, looking at the door like she was personally offended by wood. Then she called Jess. Jess's phone rang upstairs. She came down, she'd been awake, listening, and answered it in the kitchen. Gail said, "Jessica, something's wrong with your lock. My key isn't working." Jess said, "Mom, it's 6:15 in the morning. We said brunch at 11. Gail said, "I know, but I wanted to surprise you. Can you let me in?" Jess said, "Mom, come back at 11. There was a pause. Gail said, "But I have presents." Jess said, "Bring them at 11. Gail left. She sat in her car for about 3 minutes first, engine running, headlights on, just sitting there. I imagine she was processing, or calling someone, or staring at the key on her keychain, wondering when locks became uncooperative. Then she drove away. Slowly, like a person leaving a scene they're not done with. I sat in my chair for another few minutes. Oakley had woken up by this point and wandered into the living room. He looked at me. I looked at him. I said, "Merry Christmas, Oakley." He sneezed. "Good talk. Wait. She tried the key 6 times. 6. And then tried the back door. The inspector was running a full perimeter check at 6 a.m. on Christmas morning, with a key that opens nothing, 2 bags of presents, and the unshakable belief that she has a right to enter this house whenever she wants. And Nate, my guy Nate, was sitting in a chair with coffee, watching this happen through the window like it was the season finale of his favorite show. This man set up a viewing station for his own prank. He had a blanket. He had a mug. He had front row seats to the greatest lock-based comedy in the history of Christmas mornings. I'm in tears. Actual tears. The back door attempt? Chef's kiss. She really thought maybe the back door would accept her fake key. "Ma'am, the key doesn't open anything. It's not the door's fault. It's your clearance level." Jess came downstairs around 7. She found me in the chair, coffee mug empty, grinning like an absolute child. She said, "Well?" I said, 6 attempts, both doors, left at 6:22. She said, "You timed it." I said, "I logged every attempt." She shook her head, but she was laughing. We made breakfast together, eggs and toast, nothing fancy, and exchanged our gifts. I got her a book she'd been wanting and a new collar for Oakley with his name embroidered on it. She got me a really nice jacket and a card that said, "To the best lock installer in the Midwest." She'd planned that card weeks ago. We're a team. The brunch was interesting. Gail arrived at 11 on the dot. She walked in, through the door that Jess opened for her, like a normal guest, and immediately said to me, "Nate, I think there's something wrong with the key you gave me." The entire family was already there. Craig, Holly, Grandma Rose, everyone heard it. I said, "Oh, really? What happened?" She said, "I came by this morning to surprise you guys, and the key wouldn't work. I tried it multiple times. I think the lock might be broken." I said, "The lock works fine. We used it this morning." She said, "Well, then the key must be defective." I said, and this is the moment I'd been building toward, the one I'd rehearsed in my head for 2 months. "Gail, the key isn't defective. It was never meant to open the door." The room went quiet. Craig looked at Holly. Holly looked at Grandma Rose. Grandma Rose looked at her plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. Jess stood next to me and didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough. Gail's face went through about 6 expressions in 3 seconds. Confusion, realization, embarrassment, anger, more embarrassment, and then something I didn't expect, a kind of defeated acceptance, like the jig was up and she knew it. She said, "You gave me a fake key?" I said, "I gave you a key that was exactly as useful as your emergencies." "You never had an emergency, Gail. You just wanted access. And we told you multiple times that we weren't comfortable with that. You didn't listen, so I had to show you." Gail looked at the key in her hand. She'd pulled it out of her purse at some point during the conversation, like a prop in a courtroom drama. She looked at me. She looked at Jess. She looked at the key again. And then she said something that surprised me. "You could have just told me to stop." I said, "Gail, we did. Multiple times. You didn't stop." She didn't have a response to that, because she knew I was right. She knew that every conversation we'd had about boundaries had ended with her doing whatever she wanted anyway. The fake key wasn't the first boundary. It was the last one. The one she couldn't ignore because it was made of metal and physics. Nobody spoke for about 15 seconds. Craig cleared his throat and said, "So, should we eat?" God bless Craig. The man is a tension diffuser. Holly started bringing dishes to the table. Grandma Rose said, "This stuffing smells wonderful." And just like that, the brunch continued. Gail was quiet for most of it. Not angry quiet, processing quiet. After the meal, she pulled me aside in the hallway. I expected a fight. Instead, she said, "I know I overstep. I know that. I don't want to be shut out of Jessica's life." I said, "Gail, you're not shut out. You're here. It's Christmas. You're eating brunch with your family. Nobody shut you out. We just locked the door." That's all a locked door is. It's not a rejection. It's just a door that requires a knock. And knocking isn't hard. You do it everywhere else in the world. You knock at the doctor's office. You knock at your bridge club. You knock at the grocery store. You just didn't think you had to knock here. And you do. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "When did you get so smart?" I said, "I've always been this smart. You just never asked me anything besides where the casserole dish was." She almost smiled at that. Almost. Then she said, "I'll try." And she walked back to the table. She didn't apologize. That's not really Gail's style. But she said she'd try. And that was enough for now. Rome wasn't built in a day. And Gail wasn't going to transform into a boundary-respecting angel overnight. But I'll try from a woman who's been entering without knocking for 30 years? That's a start. That's a real start. Final update. Grandma Rose, by the way, was the real MVP of that brunch. While all the drama was happening, she sat at the table eating her stuffing and not saying a word. After the meal, when things had settled down and people were in the living room opening presents, she pulled me aside and said, "Nathan, I've been dealing with Gail for 35 years. She's my daughter. I love her. But she needs to learn that love doesn't come with a master key." Then she patted my arm and went back to her stuffing. Grandma Rose is a legend. I'm naming my first child after her. Not really, but maybe my first golden doodle. It's been about 4 months since Christmas. Things have actually been better. Gail calls before she comes over now. Every time. She called last week and said, "Is it a good time?" And when I said we were busy, she said, "No problem, I'll come Saturday." No guilt trip, no passive-aggressive sigh. Just, "No problem." I nearly fell off the couch. Jess and I talk about it sometimes. Whether the fake key was too far, whether there was a gentler way. And maybe there was. But we tried gentle. We tried conversations. We tried asking nicely. We tried boundaries with words. None of it worked because Gail doesn't hear words. She hears results. And the result of a key that doesn't turn is, "I can't get in." That's a result she could understand. It wasn't mean. It wasn't cruel. It was just a lock being a lock. She hasn't asked for a key since. She did, however, buy us a Ring doorbell for our anniversary and said, "Now I can check on you without a key." Jess and I looked at each other and laughed. The woman is incorrigible, but she's trying. In her own way, she's trying. Jess told me the other night that her mom called her and said, "I've been thinking about the key thing. I understand why Nate did it. I wish he hadn't, but I understand." That's as close to an apology as Gail gets. Jess says it's growth. I say it's a ceasefire. Either way, I'll take it. Oakley, for his part, loves Gail. He goes absolutely insane when she visits. Tail wagging, jumping, licking her face. He's the one member of this household who genuinely wants her here at all times. Traitor. The fake key is still on Gail's keychain, by the way. She never took it off. I asked her about it once and she said, "It reminds me to knock." I thought that was actually kind of beautiful. In a weird, Gail-shaped way. Would you have given the fake key? Or was there a better way to handle the inspector? I've thought about it a lot. And honestly, I think the fake key was the only thing that would have worked. Words didn't work. Boundaries didn't work. Locking the door didn't work. But a key that doesn't open anything. That's the one thing Gail couldn't argue with. Because the lock isn't broken. And neither is the boundary. They both work exactly as intended. Oh, and Craig texted me a week after Christmas. He said, "That was the best Christmas morning I've ever had. Can you give my mother-in-law a fake key too?" I said I'd consider it. I'm thinking about starting a business, Fake Keys by Nate, helping families establish boundaries, one useless key at a time. Anyway, Jess says I should stop making it a joke. She says it was a serious moment, and I shouldn't undermine it with humor. She's probably right. But also, I watched a grown woman try to break into my house 6 times with a hardware store prop key on Christmas morning while I drank coffee in a blanket chair. If that's not comedy, I don't know what is. Yo, it reminds me to knock. Gail said that about a fake key that her son-in-law gave her as a prank/boundary enforcement tool, and she kept it on her keychain. That's not petty anymore. That's growth disguised as a keychain charm. Nate didn't scream. He didn't lecture. He didn't give an ultimatum. He gave a woman who doesn't understand words a physical object lesson. The lock doesn't open. The boundary exists. Knock. 3 syllables. 1 fake key. 20 years of unwanted kitchen rearranging. Over. The inspector has officially been decommissioned, and she's keeping the badge as a souvenir. I've never been more proud of a stranger. What a story. Look, Nate could have handled this a dozen different ways. He could have yelled. He could have gone no contact. He could have let Jess fight that battle alone. Instead, he bought a $2 key, waited 2 months, and let the lock do the talking. And the result? Gail calls before she comes over. She knocks. She asks if it's a good time. That's not a Christmas miracle. That's a guy who understood that some people don't respond to words. They respond to evidence. And the evidence was a key that doesn't turn. Drop a comment. Fake key, genius, or too far? Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.